Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to help support the show by becoming a premium member, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast to sign up. Memberships are only $2.99 a month. By becoming a premium member, you'll be able to download episodes onto your mobile device and listen to them commercial-free wherever you go. Also, if you'd like to check out the new Dogman Encounters t-shirt store, please go to dogmanencounters.com/store and take a look around. Buying a t-shirt or sweatshirt there is another great way to help support the show. As always, thanks for listening. Alright, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is John Eby. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vic.
Oh, it's great having you. Thanks for being here. Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, right now, currently, I'm a tool and die technician in Greensburg, Indiana. I'm 37 years old. I'm engaged. I grew up in a little town in Franklin County, Indiana, called Peppertown. I lived there until I was about 12 years old. Then I moved to a bigger town, Batesville, Indiana. And I currently live in Greensburg, Indiana now, and have a house, and my fiance lives with me, and we have a German Shepherd puppy and living life.
It sounds like you have carved out a nice life for yourself. That's great to hear.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Your encounter happened when you were a kid. How long did it take you to attach the name Dogman to what you and your brother saw that day?
Well, I discovered Dogman, your show, and a lot of things on YouTube about 6-7 months ago. And this whole time, from my experience, I've always thought it was some type of Sasquatch creature. And then after I discovered Dogman, I kind of started recollecting my experiences. And it sounded more like a Dogman than some kind of Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever.
When you finally realized it wasn't a Sasquatch you saw that day, I bet your jaw dropped.
Well, kind of, yeah, you could say that. After I put those together, I started doing a lot more research on the Dogman, and I feel what I seen that day was definitely a Dogman and not a Sasquatch.
Now that you know what you do about Dogmen, do you wish it would have been a Sasquatch you saw that day?
Actually, no. I'm actually more interested in Dogman than Sasquatch. I've studied a lot of things on Sasquatch. I took classes for cryptozoology, and the whole time I was in those classes, I never heard of Dogman. I know pretty much everything about a Sasquatch, and it might sound funny, but I'm happy that it was a Dogman. I know it sounds weird, but it actually makes me smile, and, I just thinking like, wow, I actually seen one of those.
Well, it does put you in more elite company than a Sasquatch eyewitness by seeing the Dogman that day, so I can understand. Locals in the area where you grew up had a nickname for the creature that was hanging around. Please tell us more about that.
Well, I don't know how or who dubbed this name, but they called it the Hoody Wampus. I have no clue where it came from. Being a couple buddies down the road, we all had our experiences with this thing, and that's what they referred it to, so it just stuck with me.
That is kind of a funny name. In a way, it's almost a disservice to give it that name, because here this new person moves into the area and hears about the Hoody Wampus, and it almost sounds like a cartoon character. Oh, the Hoody Wampus. Then they wind up having an encounter with the thing, and they like to swallow their tongue. So, in my opinion, it's almost a disservice to call it a name like that.
Yeah, it is kind of a funny name, but a lot of my friends, that's never had experiences with the Hoody Wampus, but have heard stories. Every time it's mentioned, their faces light up with laughter, and it's great.
Well, it's all fun and games until you actually encounter one.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Had any of your neighbors reported livestock being killed before you had your encounter that day?
I never heard of any. My dad was very protective. If there was something like that happening, he wouldn't tell me about it. We had cattle and chickens, and never have I heard of any of our livestock or any livestock around the area being killed or, mutilated or anything like that. So I'm going to say no on that one. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Well, also, too, since you were so young when this happened, it makes sense that your dad wouldn't tell you about something like that. He was probably too worried about shaking you up.
Yeah, that's the way he was. He's a really calm, collective man. He's very protective of me and my brothers and my sister. If something like that was to happen, he would keep it quiet. He probably wouldn't even have told my mom.
Trying to protect the family, that makes sense. Before you tell us what happened to you and your brother that day, please tell us about the place where it happened.
Well, it's in Franklin County, Indiana. Peppertown is that little small town. There's only probably now the whole area, probably 50 people. And we lived down on Walnut Fork Road. And my dad, he owned about 70 acres, heavily wooded area, some hills. It was fairly hilly out that way. We had a barn, 30 head of cattle, some chickens, and 3 ponds on the property. And one of the ponds my dad had heavily fenced in, and he had Canadian geese in one of the ponds because he loved those birds, and he, I guess, clipped their wings somehow so they couldn't fly away. And he would always go out and feed them every day, and it was one of his prized pets, I guess you'd say. And a lot of pine trees, hay fields. It was a beautiful, beautiful setting, beautiful woods, very thick though. We had a big patch of pine trees right next to the garage, which I would always, as a kid, go play with my neighbor and be silly and goof off. And we would always play in the woods, make our own forts, that kind of stuff, just living a typical country boy's life. Just having a good old time, no worries in the world.
Well, it sure sounds like a great place and a great life to me. It's too bad the Dogman had to come along and spoil that for you.
I know. Well, he didn't spoil it for me. It opened my mind, even as a kid, seeing something like that not supposed to be there, but it is. And it actually opened my mind to a lot of different things. And it led me to experience a lot of things in my life as a grown-up. I used to be a paranormal investigator, a buddy of mine. We used to go around and people would tell us about, they think they have a ghost in their house, and we'd go check it out, that kind of stuff. And my experience as a kid has led me to do a lot of things that normal people don't typically do.
Well, it is. When you have an experience like that with the Dogman, it opens a lot of doors. Some doors you don't mind being opened, others you do. All right, John, please tell us about your encounter. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right, well, I'm going to say I was about 8 or 9 years old. My brother and I, he had his friend over. We were all just in the backyard playing with the dog. We had a beagle. His name was Barney. And we were all just sitting there and throwing a ball back and forth. And it was a bright, sunny day, beautiful out. And my sighting happened in broad daylight, which is kind of, in my experience, investigating, that doesn't typically happen. Well, it was, like I said, a real bright, sunny day and beautiful out, light breezes blowing, back in the backyard playing with the dog. And we had a hill, I'd probably say about almost a half a mile away from our house. And we would always put targets up at the bottom of that hill and go back to the house and shoot high-powered rifles at our targets. Well, we were sitting there, and my brother's friend, I happened to just look at him, and he had this look of being scared and confused at the same time. And he points at that hill, and he says, "What in the heck is that?" And we sit there and we observed this bipedal creature walking across the hill. I'm going to say this thing was roughly about, my recollection, about 8 feet tall. And how I can judge that is because the neighbor a couple miles away has cattle that go and graze on that hill. And the Dogman, whatever this thing was a lot bigger than a cow. And it was solid black, Being about a half a mile away, I didn't really get any good features. It was walking, like I said, upright, and I could see like ears and like a muzzle. And as this thing was walking, we were staring at this thing. The thing stops dead in its tracks, turns and looks at us. For about, I'd say 10 seconds, we locked eyes. And we were just in awe looking at this thing, saying, what in God's name is this creature looking at us? And it sat there and stared at us for about 10 seconds, and then turns around and with amazing speed takes off running up the hill and disappears into the thick woods. That is the first experience I've had. That's the only experience I've had. I've had other people tell me that they've seen this thing. My dad actually had, I believe, an experience with him, with Dogman, but he wouldn't tell me really any details about it. I'd say about a week later, maybe a week, my mom, my sisters, my brothers all went to town to go grocery shopping, and I stayed home with Dad, and he was out bush hogging the hayfield behind the barn and down it, and goes down a little hill, and then there's wood lines and thick woods down that way. Well, I was up front, out in the front yard with my dog, just playing around being a kid, and all of a sudden I see my father come flying over the hill. Let me give you a little brief bio on my father. He was a United States Marine. He fought in the Korean War, got the Purple Heart for being wounded. And he was a design engineer. Very smart man, very smart man. He was no nonsense. He was really serious. He was a good provider. He was a good dad, but he wasn't afraid of much. Let me put it that way. It took a lot to make him even have any type of fear. Being a Marine, I'd say that's probably what made him that way. But well, anyway, after my dad, he came back flying over the hill on the tractor, and he rolls up to the front of the house where I was, and I could just tell that there's something wrong by the way he's looking. The whole time he was coming towards the house, he kept looking over his shoulder, like looking for something. And well, he told me to get in the house, and well, I got in the house because it's what you do when your dad tells you what to do. And my dad goes running upstairs and grabs a bolt action 30-06 and loads it up. And that's not like my dad to be going like that and grabbing a gun. Well, he jumps back on the tractor, and I walk out the front door, and he's like, get your butt in the house and stay there. And I said, what's wrong? And he's like, he didn't say nothing. He just took off. Well, he went over the hill. I stayed on the front porch. I didn't go in because I was kind of freaking out because, you know, I'm not used to my dad acting this way. I could tell he was freaked out about something. Well, he went back over the hill where he was bush hogging, and probably like 5-10 minutes later, I hear boom, boom, boom. And I'd say another 5-10 minutes later, he came rolling back up to the front of the house with the tractor. Again, the whole time he was looking behind his shoulder, like he was looking for something. And I could still tell that he was a little upset about something. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? He's like, don't worry about it. Just go in the house and watch cartoons. And I was like, what did you shoot? And he said, oh, it was just a big dog. And him being my father, I believed him. I just thought he was a dog. Now, let me say another thing about my father. We had, like I said, 30 black Angus cattle. One of them was a bull. His name was Jack, and he was very mean. And sometimes he would get out of the pen. And I believe my dad said he weighed about 1,500 pounds. So he was a pretty big boy. He was very aggressive. Now, when he would get out, my dad would grab a .22 rifle to corral him in. Okay, a 1,500 pound bull. And my point is, if he says it's just a dog, why would my dad grab a 30-06 for a dog where he's grabbed a .22 rifle for a 1,500 pound bull? So that made me believe that it was much more than just a dog. It was my belief it was the Dogman. He actually saw it and it freaked him out, and he shot at it. Well, a couple days later, me and my older brother, we went rabbit hunting over the same hill where he was bush hogging the other day, and we came across this blood stain in our freshly cut field about the size of a queen mattress, and there was bloody tracks walking like it was going into the woods. And these tracks were probably 4 to 5 feet apart from each other. And they were really huge. I'd say the feet were probably, I couldn't make my tracks out or anything, but it was just a blood stain. We didn't think to get a sample of it because we weren't really thinking about that at that time. And they were headed towards the woods. And if my dad did shoot a dog, a regular dog, 3 times with a 30-06, that dog would be dead. So whatever he shot at must have survived that big of a caliber rifle, and I guess lived. I don't know. We didn't follow the tracks. We were just more focused on going hunting. That's what we like to do most of the time, that and go fishing a lot. Well, I'd say that same day or the next day, this was evening when I discovered my dad had, in one of our ponds, he had a heavily fenced in, and he had like 5 or 6 Canadian geese that he kept in there. He had their wings clipped so they couldn't fly away, and, you know, he'd go out and feed them every night, and he loved those birds. Those were his pets. Well, I went outside because I was looking for my dog, and I happened to just walk over towards that pond where it was fenced in with the geese, and I seen like something just grabbed the fencing and just tore it, ripped it open. And whatever it did, it got into that pond and mutilated his geese. They were shredded. They were torn to shreds. And I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. So I took off running back to the house, and my brother was there and my dad. I said, Dad, your geese are dead. And he's like, what? He runs out there, and we all checks it out and sees that his geese are just, they're torn to shreds. I mean, it was sickening. Well, that really upset my dad. And again, my dad, being a Marine, he goes upstairs again, grabs his 30-06, lays in a prone position, looking towards the same place where he was bush hogging the other day. He was out there for hours, just looking, waiting for something to just come around the corner, and he was going to blast it. Well, nothing ever did. Well, my father passed away in 92, and we moved to the town 10 miles away from where I grew up, and Batesville. My mom had purchased a house there, and I still had buddies, you know, out in Peppertown that I would still stay in contact with and, you know, talk to and hang around still. And my one buddy told me a story about a neighbor of mine, old neighbor out in Peppertown down the road from us. He had an experience one night. He worked the late shift, so he didn't get home until about 2:30 in the morning. And, well, I guess he got home one night, and he was just sitting there on his couch, sitting there watching TV, drinking a beer, chilling out after work. And he had a pet goat that he had tied up outside underneath a big street light, illuminate the whole yard. And he had a little shelter for the goat to go lay in. And, well, he heard his goat making a lot of racket and sounded freaky noises, he said. So when he's like, what the heck's going on? So he gets up on that couch, and, you know, he walks to the door, and he opens it up, and he sees what he said, this 8-foot tall dog thing. That's what he called it, a dog thing, messing with his goat, trying to get him. Well, it freaked him out, of course, and he runs into his bedroom, and I guess he kept the .44 Magnum next to his bed, and he ran outside, and he said it was about 30 feet away from him, and he said this thing turned and looked at him, and he said he almost wet himself. And he said he pulled his pistol up and shot it. And he hit it, he said, because it flew back a little bit. I mean, getting hit by a .44 Magnum, that's a pretty heavy bullet. And he said this thing ran up a tree. Okay. It didn't climb it, he said. He said this thing just was up in the top of this tree like nobody's business. It was so fast, he said. And it sat there and just stared at him and growled. Well, he's freaking out. Oh, my God, what in the world is this? And he unloads that revolver on this thing. I guess he said he must have hit it a couple times. This thing fell out of the tree and hit the ground with a thud. And he said that thing, the dog thing, took him a second to get up. And this thing went crashing through the woods, breaking trees, screaming, roaring. He said it scared him so bad that he left that place and went and stayed at the neighbor's house down the road. It freaked him out so bad. went back the next day, and he said there was some blood, and he said he saw some footprints. He said it looked a lot like a huge German Shepherd track, is what he said. Well, that's the end of that incident right there. There was a preacher. He had purchased some land out in Peppertown. His name was Pastor Greg. Very good man, very smart. He had a house built out on that land out in Peppertown. And he said one night he was in there alone. His family hasn't moved in yet because it was just, still being built. And he was basically just finishing up doing the drywall himself. He said it was about 9 or 9:30 at night. It was in the wintertime, and it was snowing, and there's snow all around. And like I said, he was doing drywall, and something started banging on the side of his house, and it circled the house, banging, just hitting it hard. He said that this house was shaking, and he said it scared the living daylights out of him because he didn't know what it was. And he said he hid in his son's closet for about 2 hours while whatever this thing was just going around the house, just banging on the sides and screaming and making freaky noises, he said. Well, it stopped. He said he sat there for about a half hour after it stopped, and he got sick of being scared, he said. And his son had a baseball bat in his room there, and he said he grabbed that baseball bat, said a prayer to God, and he went outside to see if whatever it was still there. Well, whatever it was gone, but the damage to the house was bad. All the siding was broke, bricks were broken. It was just trashed, he said. He said it cost him so much more money to have this fixed. And he did say he observed large tracks in the snow leading towards the woods. Well, he said he wasn't going to go after that thing with just a baseball bat, so he got in his car and left. Went back to his house or apartment, wherever they were living before they moved out there. There's a lot of people around that area. Even to this day, I still see a lot of people from my old neighborhood. They say this thing's still around there. The one lady I talked to probably, maybe a year ago, she said this thing's still out there. It comes close to her house. She said she can smell it. It smells like raw meat / wet dog. And she said this thing would come within about probably 50 yards of her house and just, I don't know what it does. She said it just sits there and just makes noises, and then it'll disappear for a few weeks, and then it'll come back. A lot of people around there still, to this day, still see this thing and having experiences. Now, lately, I haven't been talking to anybody out there because I've been working a lot and doing a lot of overtime, and I got my own life. But I'm going to still stay in contact with my friends that are still out there, and I'm going to see if there's any more experiences or more anything unusual happening, animal mutilations, anybody being attacked, sightings. And this thing will live in my memory till the day I die, seeing this thing. That day that I experienced the Hoody Wampus, it's opened a lot of doors for me. This whole time, up until 6-7 months ago, I've always thought it was a Bigfoot or something. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever. Now listening to the Dogman encounters and looking at a lot of stuff on YouTube, it just clicked. Okay, this wasn't a Sasquatch. This is a Dogman. The features of this thing were dog-like. Everything that everybody said they seen tracks looked like a dog. And even though my experience, I've seen this thing was half a mile away, maybe, I could still see features like a muzzle, ears, and never seen it on its four legs. Everyone that's had an experience with this thing say it's bipedal. It walks upright like a human, except much larger and much scarier. And I'm just more interested in finding more information out about this thing out there. And it's actually made me more interested and more excited, let me say, that it was a Dogman and not a Sasquatch. So I'm going to do a lot more research, make some phone calls. Maybe this weekend I can maybe cruise out there and just talk to the neighbors, my old neighbors, see if there's anything going on. And that's pretty much what I got to say about the Hoody Wampus.
That's pretty wild to think that after all these years, people are still having problems with it or them in that area. That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. 'Cause it's beautiful out in Peppertown. Woods, fields. I mean, it's really heavily dense woods, very heavy. Because we used to go squirrel hunting a lot, and I'd be out miles out in the woods and not see nothing. There's a lot of times it was hard to actually go hunting up there because all the little small creatures, weren't there. They weren't there. I don't know if Dogman had anything to contribute to that. Maybe that's what he was eating, rabbits, deer. I don't know. I'd have to go to like places down the road to go hunting, miles down the road to go even see anything. So I'm pretty sure that's his food source is all like maybe small game, deer, occasional stray dog, maybe, cats. Never had my knowledge, any cattle mutilations or chickens going missing. It's kind of funny though, after all that experience that was going on before my dad died, he sold all of our cattle and just got them out of there and got rid of the chickens and everything.
You'll find that when dogmen are in a particular area for an extended period of time, the small game thinning out the way you just described is pretty much what almost always happens.
Yeah, that's what I chalked it up to, is dogman getting his meal. You got to eat too, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say they do, unfortunately. You said your dad passed in 92, and I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. But before he passed, did you ask him to come clean on what really happened to him that day?
Well, he died when I was 12, so I didn't get a chance to ask him much. He died at the age of 64. Yeah, I was 12 when he died. He was 64. I was a late child, I guess. I was an accident, I guess, but he passed away when I was 12 years old, and I never got a chance to ask him about that, or if he's ever seen anything, or even got to pick his brain about anything. Because, being a kid, you don't really think about that kind of stuff. You're just focused on being a kid, and you don't think about your dad's going to die, or you're not going to be able to have him raise you. You just don't think about that kind of stuff. And after all that, after he shot, whatever, I never thought anything else. I just went on about my business. And thinking about it now, I remember a lot of times my dad would just walk around the property with a gun. And he said he was going hunting, but you don't go squirrel hunting with a 30-06. I think he was looking for it, or doing patrols, making sure it's not around the house or something, trying to protect us.
Yeah, sounds like he was just doing his job. After laughing at you the way he did when you told him what you and your brother had seen, were you glad your dad had a run-in of his own with it about a week after you saw it?
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. I guess that maybe put him in his place. We weren't lying. Now that he's seen something, he knew that we weren't lying about having our encounter, and I guess he got a chance to get a couple shots off at it. And yeah, I'm going to say I'm glad he did, because now he knew that we weren't making a joke or being silly.
Well, a turnabout is fair play, so I can understand you feeling that way. How much did your dad's behavior around your farm change after having his own run-in with it? You mentioned how he used to patrol with that 30-06, but did he do anything else that was kind of strange or unusual compared to how he used to behave before you had that experience?
Well, not really. He did seem like he was more on high alert, being outside. After that, he never went anywhere on a property without a gun. And that was the only thing I would say had changed after, I guess, what he had experienced.
Well, after seeing what he must have seen that day, I can't say I blame him for acting that way. I think I'd carry a rifle with me at all times, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Did the way you looked at your dad change after you saw him respond to his experience the way he did?
No, it made me look up to him a little more, because he did what he had to do to protect me, my family. And it actually made me look up to him a little more.
Well, it sounds like he was a good man, just doing the best he could to protect his family. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive. You said you and your brother had gone rabbit hunting 3 to 4 days after your dad had his own encounter. After seeing what the two of you saw and hearing about what happened to your dad, were you reluctant to go hunting the way you did?
Well, we didn't hunt much after that. Like I said, the small game was fairly thin. After we saw that big stain of blood, our hunting trip that day was pretty quick, which wasn't typically, our thing. And years has gone by. Also, a buddy of mine, he had some land out there I'd go hunting on, squirrel hunting. And every time I'd go out there, out to Peppertown to hunt, I would never go without a sidearm. You know, I'd carry a 12-gauge shotgun, just squirrel shot for like squirrels and whatnot. And I would always have my 357 Magnum strapped to my hip. I had a permit to carry. And I'd always have that 357 on my hip loaded with some pretty heavy bullets in case somebody decided to show up with a bad attitude.
Well, I can't say I'll blame you. When it was walking across that hill, you said it was walking upright. Did it have a slumped over posture, or was it standing without much of a slump?
Trying to think here. Yeah, it did have kind of like a hunch in its back. And I realized as I'm gotten older that when this thing turned to look at us, it didn't turn its head. It turned its whole shoulders like a gorilla would do. That's why I thought, you know, maybe this was Bigfoot at first, because an ape, their heads are sunk into their shoulders, and if they turn their head to look, their chin runs into their shoulders, so they have to physically move their own shoulders and torso to look, and that's what this thing did. But like I said, I had noticed a muzzle like a dog and large ears like a dog. And again, this thing had some incredible speed because he cleared that was a fairly huge hill this thing was walking on, and it cleared probably 200 yards in like less than 20 seconds. It was pretty fascinating.
Well, it must have been. Like you said, it was a long way off, but were you able to see what kind of leg structure it had?
You know, it did kind of have like canine, like if you stand one of your dogs up, how their back legs are, you know, they're bent. That's what their back legs look like to me. And I could tell that this thing was very huge from distance because, like I said, I compared it to the cattle that were usually on that hill. And this thing looked much, much bigger. And yes, it did have a canine type of structure.
I see. So it was a canine type dog man.
Yes.
Did you ever go to the spot where you saw it to look for evidence, like footprints?
No, I didn't. My brother went. My two brothers went, actually. Of course, they didn't let me go because it was a little kid. They were like, stay here, we'll tell you what we find. They didn't find anything. They scoured up and down that hill, went into the woods up there. I was in the backyard the whole time, and I watched them. And when they got back, they said they never found nothing. No tracks, no scat, hair, nothing.
Well, deep down, I'm sure you really didn't mind not being able to go with him that day.
Yeah, knowing my luck, he would have showed up and snatched me up or something. But I don't know. I'm just kind of glad that they made me stay there. They were protecting their little brother.
Yeah, sounds like they were. Are you able to head into the woods alone now and do whatever you'd like to do in the woods without any problems, or do you still have hang-ups?
No, I don't have any problem going to the woods. I love nature. I haven't recently been to the woods because I live in town now, and you know there's not much around here. But if I had the opportunity to go hiking in the woods or whatever, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'd be obviously on alert. I probably would still have a gun with me or something, but I'm not afraid of going into the woods one bit. I love it.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that you're able to deal with it in such a healthy way.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of more people have had more traumatic experiences with the Dogman. Luckily, mine was not so scary. You know, that's why I believe it actually interests me more than scares me.
No, I understand. Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask you. I was going to ask if you're more frightened or fascinated by dogmen.
No, I'm more fascinated by them because I'm the kind of person, if I'm interested in something, I dig and dig and dig and dig and dig till I find out what I want, you know, and I've got my own little Facebook group. I just started actually 2 days ago. It's called Dogman of North America. And I'm actually with members of a lot of other dogman groups on there. And I always look at new posts, you know, see if there's something I missed. But so far, I'm pretty much in the process of wanting to go, it might be stupid, but go look for it. But I don't know if I'd want to do that alone. And I don't know too many people that would want to go look for a dogman.
Well, unfortunately, you'd be surprised how many people actually do want to do that. Yeah, I have people contacting me who, unfortunately, it sounds to me like they've got no business coming out of their mom's basement, let alone stepping foot in the woods where they know a dogman's supposed to be. Yeah, if you're going to do that sort of thing, I really hope you know what you're doing, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Right. That's why I haven't done it yet, because I need to have more preparation and look into things more before I want to go dogman hunting.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, please do be careful. Would you describe yourself as being obsessed with the topic or just interested?
I'd say obsessed. I mean, I'm not a premium member of your show yet, but I did purchase a Dogman t-shirt, and my days off, that's what I do. Is I'm on YouTube looking for videos, photos, howl recordings, just anything. I'd say more of an obsession than interested.
Well, that wouldn't make you any different from most eyewitnesses. Once you have an experience like that, yeah, it's pretty typical to become obsessed. Have you shared your experience with many people, or for the most part, have you kept it to yourself?
No, all my friends know my experiences. I've told complete strangers before, and they just kind of look at me like, really? But yeah, everybody knows. My fiance knows. I told my mom. She believes me. My brothers, they believe me, obviously, too, because one of them was there, and I'm not afraid for ridicule or anything. I mean, I know what I saw, and I'll tell you, I ain't afraid to tell anybody what I've seen or any of the experiences out there. Or any of the people that told me their stories. I tell their stories too all the time.
When you told your fiance about your sighting, how'd she respond?
She just got a big grin on her face and rolled her eyes.
Oh boy.
Yeah, well, she grew up in the country also, but she's never seen anything near that. I've even asked her, no, never seen Dogman, Bigfoot, or UFOs or anything. I was like, all right, you're lucky.
Yes, she is lucky. So she still doesn't believe you.
I don't know if she doesn't believe me. She believes that I believe what I saw. She wasn't there, and she's just going off of my word, which is fine, because if I've never had any kind of experience, I'd just like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it is a big leap to expect someone who's never seen a dogman or doesn't even know about dogmen to buy into them wholeheartedly, so I can understand her responding the way she did.
Yeah, she grew up going to church, and, there's nothing wrong with that, and just not believing in anything like that. She's said she's had a time, and, that's okay. I've seen my fair share of them guys too, but yeah, it'd be kind of hard for somebody to wrap their mind around a dogman or seen a Sasquatch or something.
Oh, it would. Yeah, to be fair, it definitely would. How far do you live from that area now?
I live about 45 minutes.
Ooh, that's still pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. There hasn't been any, to my knowledge, any dogman encounters around where I live now. Of course, I haven't really been asking, but maybe I should.
Yeah, I think I would. If I were in your shoes, I think I would check that out. Earlier, you mentioned that you used to be a paranormal researcher. Was your encounter the reason why you got into that field?
Yes, like I said, that whole experience of seeing this thing has, like I said earlier, opened a lot of doors for me, and having me do stuff like, doing paranormal investigations and, always looking for something that isn't supposed to be there, whether it's hearing a ghost story or somebody saying they've seen a flying object or something simple as that. I've actually kind of jotted down a lot of experiences in a little journal I have, and I started that back in 2006, and I got a lot of things written down. I mean, even my experiences, other people's experience with the Dogman, ghosts, UFOs, all that kind of stuff. And it's my hobby, I would say, to do stuff like that.
Of all the paranormal entities and things you've researched, ghosts, you name it, is there anything on that list that frightens you more than dogmen?
No. Nothing to me would be scarier than having a violent dogman attack or experience. Bigfoot, they typically tell you to get the heck out of their territory pretty much, or throw rocks at you or something, to where you can safely get away from ghosts. I've heard typically they just pretty much are there, just scare you. They scare people, and the spirits, I know they're not meaning to do that because they're confused of why they're there and whatnot. But no, nothing has got me more freaked out and having a scary, vicious Dogman attack. That'd be a fear. I've been into werewolves since I was a kid. Since I've seen this thing, I've watched werewolf movies, and I can't believe that a man can shapeshift into a wolf. I don't believe that. But I do believe the Dogman is a creature, a beast on its own. No transforming by the moonlight or anything like that. I believe it's just there. And it's not a man wearing a wolf pelt or something. It's a flesh and blood creature.
I agree. I feel the same way. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, John. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, all I got to say is, if you do have an experience, don't be afraid to tell people, call the show here. And if you do happen to want to pursue in search of this creature, you better do your research. And I suggest don't do it alone. Take a gun, if that's what you want, if that's what you do, but make sure you're safe, because these things, I've read a lot of stories, documentaries on this thing, and it can be very, very violent and even kill you. So my closing comment was to be safe and do it smart.
Well, that's good advice. You know what they say, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, John, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome.
Thanks again so much for your time. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.